local citizens wanted to make change here in Monmouth and Independence, and this became kind of a meeting place, a think tank, to get people to encourage each other to run for like city council, mayor, those kind of things that are important, right? In each, whether it's a big or small town, we all kind of have started realizing that we have to get more involved. And anyway, I thought my phone was going off. So Amy, she's the head of this chapter, right? The National Action Task Force. And I don't know anything about their group, so I'm learning along with you. And I think it's great that there's more groups starting up, whether they're small or large, in the valley, in your towns and everything else. So I think it's great that we can all learn and then share information to each other during these challenging times, and we're all trying to figure out what's going on, and we want to try to bring it back together and unite. And so with that, the only thing I mentioned is if you need to use the restroom, you just go down the hallway. There's 2 restrooms down the hall. And with that, Amy, I'll let you take over.
Thank you. I have a follower. That's fine.
I'll take care of it.
We've got 2 followers. So I'm Amy. I am the Oregon State Coordinator with the National Action Task Force. And I got involved with the National Action Task Force because I wanted to find people that were like-minded like me, who knew that there was something wrong with this world, and wanted to figure out how to fix it. Problem solving. Like, let's get people together and figure out how to fix this. And I have to give a shout out to Thomas Humphrey. I was on the internet one day and I watched him go into a pharmacy and take the vaccine, but instead of taking it, he literally walked out with the vial. He said, you know what? This stuff is killing people. I'm going to take it to get tested to find out what's in it. Take this mask, I'll trade you for this vaccine, and we're going to figure this out. And I was like, that's the kind of person I need to be around. These are the kind of people I need to be involved with. People who are willing to take that kind of risk for other people. And so I called and got myself on the email list. And they called me and they're like, hey, you want to be a state coordinator in Oregon? And I was like, I have no idea what that means, but sure, I'll do it. And so I found out my job entailed calling people who were like me, who had signed up to be like, hey, I want to make a difference. I know there's something I can do. I just haven't figured it out yet. And I got a list of names and started calling people, and it was like a relief, like finally people who get it, people who aren't just compliant, people who aren't just consenting and going along with the narrative, And I called probably 13 people in one day, and the last phone call I made was a miracle.
Laura, I'm supposed to be recording you, and I can't do that with all these other blabbing in my face.
It's okay. So anyway, it was I called the last person on my list, and her name was Peggy Collins, and she said, you know what, I have my son, he's amazing, he's sat and studied all the ORS statutes for the past 18 months. Anything that you could think of involving the law, my son knows it. And I was like, that's who I need to talk to. Because I know the system's corrupt. I know the police aren't doing their job. I know all our public officials are just extorting our money. And they're wasting our time. And they're perpetuating this hoax to where it's going to become to where everybody has to take a vaccine or lose their jobs or lose their livelihoods. So I called Ricki, and we talked for like 5 hours for the first day, and he told me everything that he learned, and I was like, hey, we need to go talk to everybody that I know, and anybody I don't know, and let's get them on board with what you know. And so him and I have been doing this together for the past couple months. We've traveled from Oregon to Florida and back, trying to strategize how we're gonna are supporting our enslavers. And one of the things Ricki and I have decided to do together is to go out and question the police and ask them, why aren't you doing your job? Why aren't you doing the job you were paid to do for us? You work for the people. We are the highest authority in the land. We are your bosses. Why aren't you abiding by your contract with the people, which is the Constitution? You're elected, that's your job, why aren't you doing it? As you know, like, especially in Polk County, the sheriffs have put out a statement saying they're not gonna abide by the unlawful mandates. Well, Ricki and I decided, let's find out if it's true or not. I think there was about how many of them? 12?
Yeah, we've done 12, I think we've done about 15 now, we have at least 12 recorded.
Yeah, audits. We call them audits because, you know, we're going to investigate what's being done in the communities by our public servants. And most of these sheriffs have put out statements saying they're not gonna abide by the unlawful mandates. Yet, if we try and get to county courthouses or DMV, or a child tries to get into school without a mask, they're enforced. So really what we're trying to do right now is expose their unlawful, them stepping out of their bounds of their lawful authority is what we're trying to expose, and then not protecting the people like we expect them to do. Our children are wearing masks in school. We have to be wearing masks to go to public buildings like the courthouse to defend ourselves, and we wanna know why. And we think the people in the communities wanna know why too. So this is the reason we do the videos and why we have these meetings. And Ricki's done a pretty good job. Ricki's been studying the laws for the past, what, how long? 18 months?
I think it's 22 months now,
Yeah.
18 months with me, we bet.
Yeah. And he knows them really well. He knows them better than the cops do. And I think you'll see by the videos we play in a little bit just how much. But right now I'd like to introduce Ricki.
So I got started on all of this because, so I'm a disabled vet, and I had a lot of trouble finding my place when I got back into Oregon, especially being a conservative. And I finally found my place at an ironworking job, right? So I got started on my ironworking job March 16th, so just 15 days after all of this became a thing in the news. And by August, I had been segregated to make sure concrete didn't catch on fire from grinding sparks. So I wasn't learning anything about my job. And I told my boss, look, you're either gonna have to lay me off or figure out something for me to do. And so they laid me off. And I started calling around to discrimination lawyers and constitutional attorneys, anybody I could think of that would have an interest in my case. That was what I saw through the law as a hands down case. And all of them told me that they weren't touching it. I had no standing. They were just feeding me lies that I didn't realize. And so I took that as a challenge. You can't do that. Don't tell me what I can't do.
Yeah.
What I found out actually through learning the laws is that we are far more free. Under our current system of laws, we are far more free than any of our sheriffs or police or politicians or anybody else leads you to believe. Our laws are written in clear and simple wording as required by law. That's ORS 183750. So when I started learning how easy the law was to understand simply by reading the law and it telling me that it's easy to understand, that gives you a huge upper hand when you're dealing with these people who are telling you you're wrong, because they're only telling you that you're wrong because if you're right, it incriminates them. Now that's big, because they're telling you you're wrong or that you're too incompetent to understand clear and simple wording because it incriminates them. And that is the only reason they won't see the law in the same way you do, even though it's written in clear and simple wording.
And
Now,
you're
So yes, they like to bring up interpreting the law. Our laws were revised in 1953, and it's in chapter 174 of ORS under construction of statutes. What a lot of attorneys and other people who have studied the law like to argue is that there is legislative intent that you must take into account when you are citing each law. Well, in 1953, our amazing legislators at the time thought it was a great idea to repeal all previous laws, which also repeals all previous legislative intents, and then reenact all of the laws that they just repealed with a new legislative intent for the statutes to speak for themselves. So if anyone is telling you that that's not how they interpret the law, they're literally telling you that they are too incompetent to understand clear and simple wording and the statutes speaking for themselves. Now that's huge. That is a huge upper hand. In the courts, when you file any paper or an motion or an affidavit, there is also an intent of the parties. And intent of the party is, what is the intent behind what you're presenting to the court? So, I suspect they'll try to argue that, well, that's not how they interpret it, that's not their intent. Well, in the statute that regards intent, it says that it is the intent of the party writing, not reading. And so you can defeat them on that too. There's plenty of Supreme Court precedents as well stating that there is no ignorance of the law, meaning you know when you're violating someone else's rights. You know when you're forcing someone to do something against their will. It's very basic. And so we started seeing all these letters come out from the sheriffs, like Amy mentioned about them standing up to Kate Brown. So we decided to test them on that because we know that the sheriffs are our last line of defense before we have to resort to defense ourselves. That's literally what we hire them for, is to protect us from every last intruder on our rights, including the state or the federal government. And they're actually claiming that the state is the one giving them the orders, which means they're not working for you, they're working for the state, they're working for Kate Brown. So all these sheriffs that tell you that they're standing up to Kate Brown are working for Kate Brown. Because they will readily, willingly, and in full confidence tell you that, oh, well, the state told us to.
Just doing my job.
I'm just doing my job, I'm just following orders. Now, in every single one of these sheriff's department policies that the sheriff themselves signs and their bond insures all of their deputies under, in their department policies, every single one under non-discrimination mentions coercion specifically. Because if you discriminate against somebody as a public servant or a police officer, you are coercing your duties. You are failing or refusing to do your duties, which is to protect those rights. So, what our sheriffs are actually doing is claiming to protect us while collecting your tax dollars. And then if you want to go say anything about it or file a lawsuit because your civil rights are being discriminated against, you then have to go give up your rights to go into the courtroom or face arrest or criminal citation for not wearing a mask, which is your right.
And you'll be forced to wear a mask into the building to defend your rights.
To get into the courtroom to defend your rights, you have to give up your rights. And the same guys telling you that they will not enforce it are the ones that will arrest you or cite you. It's not the judge or the prosecutor that's arresting you or citing you. It's that sheriff's deputy that's assigned to the courtroom that's going to put his hands on you, put cuffs on you, strip you naked, search you, make you take a cold shower, take all your money, put it on a cash card, charge that cash card for all the toiletries that they're giving you, even though it's supposed to be provided for free from our tax dollars. So they're double charging you on that too. And then they're going to charge you money and criminally charge you while you're paying them to do it.
That's insanity.
That's insanity.
It is insanity.
That's what we're setting out to do with these audits, is show people
So,
how,
yes,
how
that's-
awful it is. We go on Facebook and see all the hearts and the likes and, oh, thank you so much. We wish more sheriffs were like this. We wish come to our county or we're gonna move to yours. And we're like, you guys don't get it. If you
They're
try
all-
and go and to a somewhere without a mask on and they don't want you to, you have a right to not do that. Just having the signage up on the door that says mask required is discriminatory. It's discriminating against entire protected classes of people. If you choose not to participate in whatever this is, I call it a satanic mask ritual. If you choose not to participate in that, you should be able to choose. But you have people telling you you have to do this to come in our building, and then you have sheriffs who aren't who aren't protecting your rights to be able to go in
But
there.
it's not their building, it's ours.
Well,
So
and then
it-
they'll say
so-
things like, "Well, it's a private business."
Yes,
Tell
so
them about
there's
that.
also a big misconception with businesses and public accommodations. So if your business has more than 6 employees, or you're open more than, I think it's 12 weeks a year, they're very low qualifications. If you own a business and they're open to the public, you're pretty much a public accommodation. It's your private business, but that doesn't give you the right to discriminate against anybody. And that's in every single employment contract in the entire United States. The non-discrimination policy, it's a result of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and it must be followed. You cannot waive.
How does that interact with the right to refuse service as a business though? They have the right to
There,
refuse service.
there is no right to refuse service. That is a myth as well. That is actually interrupting, commerce or interrupting interstate commerce, which is actually a federal felony. So if you have a right to public accommodation, no one else has the right to refuse you service. That's contradictory.
So they're like, no shirt, no shoes, no service. Those are awful. Those are also unlawful signs on the door. They're discriminatory. But what's worse about the mask signs is it's so broad. It's everybody has to do this or else. You face a negative consequence, which means you can't come in and buy toilet paper. All those things are against the law.
Everything everybody was scrambling for last year. You wouldn't be able to even get in and get that stuff.
If you didn't choose to participate.
And
My
so,
stores refused me entry and I just, I argued with them a couple times, but I just left.
Me too.
I didn't wait for a sheriff to come or.
oh no, you just finish your business, you self-checkout and leave.
I
No,
usually
no one
say
usually get in your way.
So they couldn't.
That's just giving, every time you fold to them, you're just giving them more authority to continue doing it.
And more.
Stand in your place.
So
And,
it's just a mask.
yes, and
It's just 2 weeks.
99% of the time, when the police show up, they're just gonna ask you to leave. At the very worst, they'll write you a trespass warning or a trespass, and you just can't go back to that business again.
Right.
But you're not gonna get a criminal citation on the first go around.
But the problem is they shouldn't even be giving you a trespass
Yes,
ticket.
they should actually be showing up to tell the store owner that they're under arrest for
Right.
coercion and extortion of rights, which are felonies.
Yep.
So when they don't do that, they become criminally liable for conduct of another. That's 161.155. And that states, as a public servant, when you coerce or refuse or fail to do your duties in protecting someone else's rights, you become criminally liable for the conduct of the person that you refuse to arrest or fail to arrest.
And they know these laws.
So if the governor committed a felony and all these sheriffs know it,
Governors can't commit felonies, but Kate Brown can.
We have to arrest them.
and they haven't done anything, and it's been 20 months,
Right. Right. Not following the law.
to me it sounds like they're in a position where they can't do anything.